time about the fact that I don't use a computer.
Let me set this. Will doesn't type. Like, doesn't use laptops, he doesn't know how to use his TV in his office, doesn't use his desktop. You just don't type.
But as you said, he's a human computer.
Yeah, there's that
I
part, but
rely
I mean,
on
I
this,
can't relate to, because I have a laptop like that too, and I'm always typing things, and you just don't.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a mystery. But we did get into a conversation about voice memos.
Talk to text.
I can't imagine you're a voice memo person. I'm not talking about talk to text.
You're not talking about talk to text?
Talk to text is one thing where you
do that?
I don't do that.
I don't either.
You get typos. Doesn't that drive you nuts? If I send someone a text with a typo, I like panic
Well, that's
about it
part
all
of my
day.
hang-up. I don't want to voice to text and have to go back and correct things. That's too much. But I was sitting next to a guy the other day who was just hammering out voice memos to somebody. I mean, animatedly, just hammering them out. And not like one long one, right? He would do like a short one, hit send, then he'd do another one and hit send. I was like, has anybody ever got a voice memo and been excited? Like, a voice memo is such a downbeat. If I look up and you send me a voice memo, I'm like, no chance.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you.
It's like a voicemail.
It's like a voicemail.
Exactly.
Don't leave me a voicemail.
No.
It is. That's what it is. It's a voicemail. Yeah, right, except sent through text. It's horrific.
That's what texts are for. Plus, the emoji conveys the emotions.
Well,
you don't need the sound of the
Pete's
voice.
all emojis.
All emoji.
I've been known to use a few emojis. They're useful.
The American flag one.
So I like the pregnant man emoji.
Oh,
Pete
that's
and
my
every
favorite.
13-year-old girl out there just talking in hieroglyphics.
I love it. I love it.
Very efficient.
Well, on to this. President Trump reacted last night. The Supreme Court will be hearing on February 8th the case to take him, remove him off the ballot, disenfranchise voters. Here's what he had to say.
The Supreme Court is taking the case from Colorado, and so they'll make a decision. And you know what I do find, and, maybe say it, maybe don't, but I say it. A Democrat judge appointed by, let's say, Obama, they're down and they say, we're appointed, that's the end. When you are a Republican judge and you're appointed by, let's say, Trump, they go out of their way to hurt you so that they can show that they have been fair, honorable people. It's an amazing difference. The Republican judges want to go out of their way to be fair and unbiased, and even to a point where they hurt you. But all I want is fair. I fought really hard to get 3 very, very good people, and they're great people, very smart people.
The New York Times says this is set to be the most explosive case since Bush v. Gore decided by the Supreme Court. I think that's accurate.
Really?
I do. In terms of election law, yes. But I think it should be 9-0. And I do think that you will have some Democrat justices, I hope, who say, look, this is wrong. This is not how the Constitution should work. This has been used twice in all of history to prosecute Confederates. And we saw in Michigan, it was, I think, 5 Democrat judges who said, look, no, this is not the way we're going to go.
I think it may be consequential to your point, but I don't think it's. I think ultimately it's going to be ruled upon, and everyone's going to say, oh, yeah.
I think it's significant for any time the Supreme Court weighs in on an election.
It is, but it's like a backhand slap to the nonsense at the state level that's saying, okay, we're going to ban the leading Republican candidate from the ballot.
You're
Should
both
be 9-0.
much more optimistic. I don't think that it will be 9-0. I think that everything in our country has been so politicized, and the tip of the spear of politicization is this insurrection narrative, and I would not be surprised at, definitely 3. Yeah. And I would brace yourself for disappointment in hoping for rationality, even at the highest levels of American government, the Supreme Court of the United States.
Let me be clear. I don't care if it's 9-0 or 5-4. I just care that the outcome. This whole we keep the country. We've jumped the shark on the perception of the Supreme Court. The left hates it right now because it's full of Trump nominees who overturned Roe v. Wade. They're going to hate and want to discredit the Supreme Court no matter what. At this point, it's about winning. And so if Donald Trump wins the case 9-0, 8-1, 7-2, 6-3, or 5-4, you still stop the attempts to remove him from the ballot. So I just think those moments where we come together, I think that's where I agree with you, Will, on this, is just, it doesn't feel like it's going to happen very often.
You know, you both just made me think. I'm sure you've heard the left say, oh, the Trump justices must step down, Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, these people with unimpeachable records of being fair. Where's the pressure on Ketanji Brown Jackson? She was appointed, but she was nominated by Biden, confirmed. This affects Biden as much as it affects Trump. So where's the pressure from the left? Ketanji Brown Jackson, you got to recuse yourself.
Oh, you want something to really anticipate? Wait for the tortured logic of that dissent.
Right.
When it comes to this decision.
Right.
All right, now to a developing story. New revelations coming to light as federal courts unsealed a new batch of documents on Jeffrey Epstein yesterday.
Jackie Ibanez has the details for us this morning. Jackie.
The third batch of unsealed documents to come from the Jeffrey Epstein case, revealing new details in the private life of the disgraced financier. The newly public documents allege Epstein and his associates would stalk nightclubs looking for teenage girls. A driver for Epstein detailing the horrifying process in his deposition, saying, quote, they would all go out to clubs to pick up girls and try to find them to bring back for Jeffrey, and would go on to add, quote, Jeffrey was giving us $200 apiece for everyone that we brought over. Meanwhile, more details are emerging about Prince Andrew, Epstein's butler, claiming that the prince would get daily massages while staying for weeks at Epstein's Florida mansion. And we're learning more about Epstein's deposition in 2016 with alleged victim Virginia Giuffre's lawyers. He reportedly invoked the Fifth Amendment some 500 times. Epstein also avoided questions about Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation during the deposition. We don't know how much material is still sealed away out of the public eye. However, more names are expected to be unsealed by January 22nd. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. I think that point about we don't know how much remains unsealed, even in what we're getting, there are, it'll say prominent politician, redacted, redacted. It just, the whole thing feels like a drip, drip, drip of, okay, we'll let you know a little bit, but most of it is what you already know, and the people that needed to be protected were protected a long time ago.
Well, the main one that's been protected is Jeffrey Epstein. Mm-hmm. I have trouble with this story because it is important on the surface level to understand who at high levels of American finance or politics had, disgusting sexual perversions. But I think the deeper story than that is why that Jeffrey Epstein was, so protected for so long, yes. Why those people were not ever arrested. And I think that the answer to that question is the real story. And what is this story about? Who did Jeffrey Epstein work for? Was he an intelligence asset? An intelligence asset for what country or what intelligence agency? This is where the answers to these questions lie, and that's the real story.
And, one thing we learned yesterday from Tony Figueroa's deposition is that Epstein would hand $200 over for every girl that walked in the door. That's what he would pay these drivers. This is a story of the powerful taking advantage of the powerless, these young girls. And Julie K. Brown, she made the point. She's the one who resurfaced this story after 11 years. It lay dormant. It was an open secret. And then the Miami Herald reporter comes around. And she says, this guy had the money for the finest prostitutes in the world. But what he wanted was young girls. And not just one, not just two, a revolving door of young women. These poor young women, many of them without parents, on drugs, in vulnerable circumstances. Disgraceful.
Yeah. Straight up trafficking. And then he basically did finances for a lot of, which
with
means
very
he
little
worked
qualification.
which means he worked for them, but that eventually, once you've got them in those compromised scenarios, they end up working for him. And that it goes back to what the real story is here in that. All right, on to another story, because on Monday, in a couple of days, you know him and you love him, and he's back. Anthony Fauci will testify before Congress on the origins of COVID and the response to COVID-19. He'll face the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic Monday and Tuesday. Well, one of the guys he talks to a lot in these settings is Senator Rand Paul, and he was on Sean's show. Here's what he gave as a preview. Watch.
That the most important question is, Anthony Fauci knew early on that the virus looked manipulated. He's admitted this in his private emails. Virus looks manipulated. We know they do gain-of-function research in Wuhan. In private, he says, virus looks manipulated, and we know they do gain-of-function research. Here's the question. The question we need to know is, how did they get permission to skip the safety committee? There's a safety committee that was set up in 2016 to oversee this research and put extra scrutiny into gain-of-function research. Now, Fauci said in committee to me, he says, oh, we looked at all of that, and all my experts said it wasn't gain-of-function. Show us the paperwork. Ultimately, the question is this. Could millions of lives been saved if Anthony Fauci allowed this dangerous research that was going on in China to go through the standard protocol, the standard safety committee? Is there a possibility that millions of lives would have been saved because the safety committee said this is too dangerous to fund this research?
Well, it's been explosive every other time he's testified before Congress, and certainly had interactions with Senator Rand Paul. So on Monday, it'll be, you hope it advances the ball. It'll be entertaining, but you hope it ultimately get to not just truth, but accountability.
But advancing the ball would require Anthony Fauci to admit what Senator Rand Paul just laid out at the beginning of the statement, that at the beginning he knew it looked manipulated.
Right. Right.
He would have to admit that, and at this point he's so dug in, why would he?
And I'm glad that they're not letting this go, and we shouldn't let it go, because that is the ultimate mistruth, the gain-of-function research, the Wuhan lab burying that. But there have been so many. I mean, remember when Dr. Fauci said, oh, you don't need masks. Oh, wait, you do need masks. And his explanation was, quote, to be without the equipment they needed. He didn't want healthcare workers to go without it. We were afraid that it would deter people who need it from getting masks. So, in other words, he willingly lied. I think that's charitable saying that to the American public, and that was his motive in doing so. And this was the ultimate lie.
All right, we're going to turn now to some headlines. We'll start here. The man who launched himself at a Las Vegas judge on Wednesday for refusing his probation request is due back in court next week. A judge ordering him to appear on Monday for sentencing, quote, by any and all means necessary, after he refused to leave his cell for the hearing last Thursday. The career criminal is scheduled for another court appearance on Tuesday for the 6 new felony charges stemming from his violent courtroom outburst. New Jersey firefighters containing a blaze that has been burning for more than 24 hours. The 4-alarm fire sparking yesterday at an industrial park near Newark Liberty International Airport. At least 3 warehouses have been destroyed. Luckily, no major injuries have been reported. An investigation won't begin until the fire is completely out. Nielsen releasing its annual year-end rankings, and the NFL is on top. Have you seen this? Well, there's a graphic that really puts it into perspective. Out of 100 broadcasts, the 100 most watched broadcasts of 2023,
On TV, yeah.
93 of them were NFL games.
Thank you, Taylor Swift.
No. Please.
Thank you, Taylor.
The report also says Super Bowl 57, which aired on Fox this past February, was the most watched program in American TV history. Really?
Wow.
With an average audience of more than 115 million viewers. And as for this year's Super Bowl, my Cowboys looking to lock up the NFC's top seed tomorrow. Top seed? Top seed? Against the Washington Commanders as part of America's
Game of the week.
I think we're
Every week.
Can we catch the Niners? I don't know. I've been so locked into college football for the past week. We're heading for the number 2 seed, I think. By the way, Pete's Vikings take on the Lions at 1 p.m., of course.
Afterthought.
Always a warm-up.
My playoff chances are on life support. We're still technically just swirling the toilet bowl, waiting to get flushed down.
I've been on a heater this year. I got the World Series. I got the college football semifinals. I mean, I'm going to count that as a victory in terms of, like, the whole big picture. You know, I mean, the Stars are doing well in hockey, and here we go. Before you know it, I'm going to be insufferable with the Cowboys.
You already are insufferable with the Cowboys.
Oh, I have not yet
Only
begun
just
to defile myself.
What, do you have teams?
Yes, Tampa Bay Bucks, but Tom Brady's gone. So now I just follow the Chiefs because I do enjoy watching Taylor in the Bucks. I will say, I know that's like...
Wait, so you're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, but Brady left, so then you went to the team that Taylor Swift went to?
I'm not a Chiefs fan. I just like watching the Chiefs because I like seeing her.
Seriously?
And following the romance.
You will tune into a game for the few shots they pop
Yes.
up of Taylor
And you
Swift?
watch the football
Absolutely,
part of it?
yes.
Really?
No.
She doesn't watch the football.
You wait for your husband to yell, Taylor's on, and you come running in.
There you go. Yes, he watches baseball.
Back it up 10 seconds.
Exactly. I'm that annoying person.
And yes, if the Vikings win and the Packers lose and like 4 other teams lose, then we're in and we'll lose in the first round. So it's great.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good about it. All right, coming up, remember when they told you this?
These extreme views aren't new. They have existed within the military for a while.
Is Austin the right person to handle rooting out extremism from the military?
You know, he absolutely is.
Turns out that was one big lie. The shocking report next.
Under surgeries, chemicals, and biological males and female sports in Ohio. The Republican legislature passed it. He had a chance to sign it. He did not. He vetoed it. I don't know what the status of it is back in the legislature for overriding that veto. But Governor DeWine has now done something, I don't know how you want to describe it, halvesy measure, under the table, a response to his critics, because he has now signed an executive order that bans gender surgeries for minors, but it does allow puberty blockers and trans athletes in women's sports. Here's the Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine.
A week ago today, I vetoed House Bill 68. I believe that parents, not the government, should be making these very crucial medical decisions for the children. At that time, I also said that there are things we need to do to further protect children and adults. And some of these things that I announced that we needed to do go well beyond what is in House Bill 68. I signed an executive order just a few moments ago, enacting emergency rules that ban gender transition surgeries for minors at any hospital or ambulatory surgical facility in Ohio. This ban is effective immediately. This will ensure that surgeries of this type on minors can never happen in Ohio.
So he's saying he wants to go further than the bill that he vetoed?
Doesn't make sense to me.
I don't get it. Will, what do you think?
I think this man showed an inherent weakness, a lack of spine, and actually, I guess, to amend what I'm saying, some level of courage it took to stand here and do something so incredibly immoral and irrational. I don't know what led him to this firm position he held before in vetoing a bill that is moral, that is on the right side of history, that has been done in several other states. The rationale which he offers is water soup weak. This should be between parents and not the state. We don't let parents amputate the limbs of their children.
Bingo.
We don't let parents put their children on heroin because they self-identify as lazy. We don't do these things because we understand that children have to be protected even by the law against irreversible bad decisions. And yet he stands here today and tries to thread this needle where, okay, we're going to stop surgeries, but you can still use chemical castration.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. So it makes me go back to, why were you so firm? It took, he said, I'm going to veto a bill. That took some level of I said backbone a moment ago. I don't know, conviction. Somebody in his office said, hey, you should I have conviction.
No,
We're
apparently
vetoing
most of
this
his
bill.
office said you should sign it. He went against everybody.
Even more. So why was he so convicted that
He
was the right thing to do?
captured by the trans activists and the hospital officials. There's a huge hospital complex in Ohio that I think got in his ear and said, this is big business for us. You can't stop this.
And speaking of the hospital complex, the medical community is non-interventionist. Pills are the last resort. Surgery is the last resort. We focus on mental health first. Why not mandate mental health first? Going to a psychologist. We're talking about children. My daughter wakes up one day and says, I want to be a cow. And we are supposed to then, shove them with pills or whatever to make their dreams come true. I don't understand this. I don't understand the medical community's posture on this. And puberty blockers, by the way, you start taking them, it's very difficult to get off. We're talking about changes to a child. You
can also talk about challenges with fertility in the future and things like that as well, things we don't know. By the way, last weekend we were all over this story. We had Chloe Cole on, who was a detransitioner, as well as Riley Gaines, who was involved in this bill and getting it passed in Ohio. Here's a perspective from both of them.
Parents don't have a right to abuse their children. This is no different from any form of abuse. This is the sterilization and mutilation of thousands of children happening within the state that he is being entirely complicit in. He has made the choice to continue this.
The votes are certainly there to overturn this, and I am confident and hopeful that it will be overridden in Ohio, making Ohio the 24th state to hopefully pass some sort of legislation that prevents men from competing in women's sports, and the 22nd state to prevent child surgical and chemical castration in the state of Ohio.
We're so backwards as a country. And to think that some blue states want to allow The surgeries, the ones that were banned by the governor, they're surgeries. You cannot change that once you've had a mastectomy.
Oh, it's becoming an
you
industry.
Cannot change that.
I mean, I read an article at a local Tennessee outlet that said families are moving out of Tennessee because it's banned there to other states, and or transporting. I mean, that's what's happening. You're having a major migration of people who, and then it becomes an industry in those states that attract people.
The AMA, all the physicians associations are all in support of this. And the only argument against what we're saying right now that I can ascertain is you're a bigot. That is the only argument for this horrific medical procedure being embraced. If you don't embrace this, you're a bigot.
If you don't allow the mutilation of children, you're a bigot. That's right.
Sounds right. All right, up next, Biden rants against Trump and his supporters.
Donald Trump's campaign is about him, not America. He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power.
Mike Huckabee on Biden's big lie. That is next.